every laugh, every smile, every hug, every kiss, every touch, every person in my life that I care about and love. But wait, maybe I'm getting too emotional. That's exactly what they say you ain't supposed to do. Suppress your feelings, never talk about your pain. Can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon' be lit. And you are now rocking with Celeste, the therapist. Let's go.
Hi. All right, so hi, y'all. If you are watching me on the replay, thank you so much for watching me. I appreciate you. If you have never been in here before, my name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston, and I have a podcast. The podcast is called Celeste the Therapist Podcast. It looks like this. And on the podcast, I talk to people that are doing things to empower other people. Hey, Omar Ruiz. I talk to people that are doing things to empower others by kind of sharing their story. And so I've been podcasting actually since 2018. And one of the things that I was doing once a month is talking about relationships. So I'm so excited for today's guest who's going to come on, and we're going to talk about relationships, and especially during this time of COVID. So I'm really interested in having a healthy dialogue around what's going on. So before we get started and I bring on my special guest, I want to put up this crisis text line. So before the show, I just like to kind of offer this. There's so many different resources out there and different cities and different states and different countries. But this is one where you text a crisis counselor, 741-741. This is another thing that I found because I know I have listeners in over 100 countries. So, this website I found, it's a nonprofit, Hope for Today. You can put in your country code and get information about mental health resources in your country. So I thought that was pretty cool, a really good resource for people to utilize. So that's that. So no matter, one of the things that happens when we're alone or when we're struggling with our mental health is that we start to feel we start to believe those negative thoughts that come into play. And so it's going to be really important for you to challenge those negative thoughts, look at the evidence, don't allow the negative thoughts to win. I tell people all the time, you have a whole world taking place inside, and be a part of the process, because whether you are a part of the process or not, the process is going to continue happening. So it's better to just kind of be a part of it. One thing that I've done too as well is I have a free wellness assessment workshop that I did. It's only 10 minutes. It's free. If you go to celestetherapist.com, there's a link for you to sign up. And all you do is learn about these different areas and the importance of really understanding how you're doing in all the areas, because we are complicated humans, and there's so many different things that we deal with. And sometimes what ends up happening is we feel like it's so complicated, so we don't do anything about the areas. But if we actually sit and take time and break down the areas, I feel like we will start to find there are some areas we're doing better in than we thought we were, or we'll start to create a plan for the areas that we find ourselves struggling in. So that's something that I really want people to take advantage of, is that free assessment. So before, so I'm going to bring in my special guest. His name is Omar. Let me bring him into the stream. All right. Hello, Omar. Can you introduce yourself to my audience?
Yes, my name is Omar Ruiz. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist out of Massachusetts. I'm also, I do speak Spanish. I'm married, and I have two beautiful daughters. One that's 3.5-ish, and the other one is 1.5-ish, who's actually going to be 2 by July.
Oh, you got your hands full. You have your hands full with the little ones.
Yes.
So the name of your practice, you're a licensed marriage and family therapist, right?
Yes.
Why did you pick that track? Like, why did you pick marriage and family?
Um, after after graduating college, I actually went to Howard University in DC, which is a historically Black university. I studied psychology there, and after there, I worked for a year, and I started to go online to search up what I could do with a psychology degree. And one of the things that showed up was family therapy, and I was interested in it because me personally, I've went through counseling. I actually grew up in a household where unfortunately there was domestic violence. And so part of me felt as though, you know what, maybe this is my calling. I didn't actually get a chance to do family therapy in my past. It was more individually focused. And so I applied to a couple schools, got into at least 3 of them, and decided, since I had already went out of state, which out of state, in state, and I went to UMass Boston to do their family therapy program. And that's how I got into it.
Oh, wow. That's pretty amazing. And then you got into it, you graduated. Why did you start the practice called Talk, Think, Thrive? Like, that's very original and unique. What is it about those 3 things that kind of you put together?
I had gotten my license in 2013. And by 2014, I started my own private practice, but I didn't have a name for it. It was just my name, Omar Ruiz, LMFT. I ended up taking a year off. And when I went back to building my practice again, I decided I need to create a brand for myself. Because who knows, one day I may want to create it more into like a group practice or even a clinic. And so I did some research, and I found that a lot of people would just do holistic mental health or something of that nature. It didn't necessarily feel original to me. And so I decided, okay, what are the things that I do in my line of work? And so the first thing is we talk. And so as I'm talking with people, my hope is that by talking, you allow them to think. And then as they're thinking, the hope again would be that they would start implementing some level of change. And that level of change would hopefully allow them to thrive in their life or their family or their relationships. So I went and on GoDaddy, and mind you, I was creating a list of different names. And for whatever reason, that combination of Talk, Think, Thrive just felt so natural and so well for me that I just went for it. And fortunately, it was available.
That's awesome. You're absolutely right. When you talk and then you start thinking, you actually do start thriving. So I love that. That's dope. Now, this is your passion. We know that. I understand why it's your passion. I understand like what your practice is all about. Now, we're in the middle of COVID, and I really want you to kind of help me and my audience kind of like think through some things and process some things around relationships. Now, we're all kind of in the house together, and from your like background and experience, because this is what you do, you are the relationship family guy. What are some things that are coming up for people in this kind of climate?
For those who are in a relationship or those who are parents, I would say the top 2 things would be the struggling balance between having to still work and parent at the same time. If you're someone who has the ability to work from home, for example, like teachers or anybody in the school system, especially those who have to do remote learning or remote distance learning. And so for those folks, they're balancing between how can I still adhere to my own kids' learning and development while still being held responsible for my own job. So for me, being that I have a 3.5 and a 1.5-year-old, my wife and I have to create a schedule to try to balance things out, because there's going to be times where we're going to be in a meeting. So right now, I'm fortunate that my wife is with my kids right now for me to be able to be fully present. But if she wasn't as available, or if she had a meeting, the kids would be on top of my lap while I'm in a meeting with someone. Fortunately, because they are so young, the folks who I do have to work with online, they don't necessarily mind it. Because I can also mute the Zoom calls. But then you have parents who are essential workers and they have to go to work and while their kids are at home. And so the struggling piece there is, depending on the age of the kids, they may need that structure from the adult to be able to make sure that they're doing their work and they're getting up on time. For those who are in relationships and not yet parents or not in that track, the issues are you're actually with the person more than you anticipated. So you're starting to learn a lot more about their habits, which gets annoying and frustrating. And you start noticing what their actual work routine is like, especially if both of those parties are people who are able to stay at home and work versus those who aren't or can't because of their roles. And so a lot of arguments happen, a lot of shutting down, a lot of needing to figure out how to take space. That's that sense of a quarantine fatigue translates into a relationship fatigue, because it's in real life, you're not with your partner 24/7. There is a sense of break because you're going outside, you're hanging out with friends, you're going to work. But when you're with each other together, it's great in the beginning because there's this honeymoon space that I would consider. But then after a while, it just gets annoying.
So when you say that you're with your partner more than you expected, it's because your average day to day, you're kind of splitting your time up, right? You're probably having some social time, you're at work. And so maybe there's some things that people may not have noticed about their partner before that they're noticing now. And also, what role do you think your people's own individual struggles are playing into the relationship when they're finding themselves struggling?
I would say that people don't have the opportunity to create that me time or that space for them to decompress because they might feel so overwhelmed by either family members or their partner. And it doesn't mean that they don't love them as much as people would assume, but it just means that their own individual struggles, say if someone's individually struggles with anxiety and this whole COVID situation is bringing the worst of it. If their partner is not used to having to deal with that or not used to supporting them around those moments because they don't happen to see those moments as much, they may not necessarily know what to do. Or they might take this tough love position of, oh, just get over it. It's fine. We're not dying. We're not in a war. And so that's not necessarily helpful because for that person, what is real to them is very surreal, that they feel as though something bad is going to happen and they need to figure out how to survive. And that by itself might be detrimental to a relationship if their partner or family members don't really understand that the issues that they face is real to them and we need to figure out how to support them.
No, that's really good. Now, when it comes to the arguments, because that's one thing you say that could be coming up more, can you give my audience some kind of tips that they can do to kind of manage and work through more healthy, effective communication styles with their partner during this time?
I would say the first thing, which a lot of people would say, but it's about like figuring out how to do it, is taking space. And what I mean by taking space is if you're confined, even if you're in a studio apartment and all you have is a bathroom and then just that big space, taking space might be, I need to go to the bathroom. I just need to enclose myself in somewhere so that I can decompress, breathe, take a shower, get a glass of cold water. And the reason why of that space is because once people are heightened to a certain extent, it's going to be very hard to really think logically in any conversation. A second would be, which is something I share with couples, is creating what I call couples language. Couples language it's like a word or a phrase that people can use. It's not a safe word, but it's a word that allows couples to communicate quickly and effectively without having to get into a drawn out discussion. A quick example would be something that my wife and I, when we ourselves had done couples therapy in the past, we had came up with a term called, now I'm forgetting it, tough spot. And so tough spot basically is where we both at a time, I might have viewed a conversation as an argument, but she didn't necessarily see it as such, but we both agreed that that was a very tough spot for us to be in. And so the responsibility of one of us would be if we were to find ourselves in a situation where a tough spot, argument or disagreement would show up, one of us would say, hey, we're about to be in a tough spot right now. It was a responsibility for the both of us to recognize, you know what, when that person said that, that means we need to slow the conversation down and not get so sped up. And so maybe that is our signal that we need to take space and or start asking questions to our partner about like, what am I doing or saying or not doing and not saying that's having you feel this way. So it could be that dishes aren't being washed, that you didn't take out the trash, and all of a sudden that piles up, and all of a sudden they're about to go berserk on you, and they don't want to. They're just saying, listen, I think we're about to have a tough spot because we discussed the chores and we discussed taking out the kitty litter, but you still haven't done it. Could we please try to work something out?
I like that whole like tough spot thing. And I think in order for that to be done, we have to put aside our defense mechanisms and our ego, because just because if my partner thinks that I am not saying it in a way that is healthy or he understands, doesn't make me a bad person. It doesn't make me like wrong. And I think that part is where couples tend to struggle, and in the way that it's being asked, right? Like instead of saying like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and going back to the communication piece, it's allowing for couples to understand that not everybody communicates the same way. So one thing I have personally struggled with for a while is this sense of defensiveness. And what that means, or what that looks like in my relationship, is that sometimes my wife might say something along the line of like, hey, you didn't, going back to the quick example, hey, you didn't take out the trash or you didn't do the dishes. Defensiveness would allow me to hear that as, I'm not being a good husband, you're blaming me, you're treating me like a child, and you're not really giving me the respect I need. Or I'm going to do it, I just need you to back off because I have other things that I'm thinking about. And so when defensiveness for me shows up, it doesn't allow me to hear my partner. So regardless of how she says it, she could say it in a soft voice and a calm voice. Because of my own struggles with defensiveness, it might get in the way. So for couples, if they as an individual struggle with anger or anxiety, those emotions are going to influence how the person responds to whatever request their partner is going to ask of them. And so in those cases, it's about like trying to figure out for yourself individually what might be the trigger point. Because people, when I see people in couples counseling, they are arguing a lot about things that to other people may not seem to be such a big deal, but for them it's big because it's been an ongoing conversation. So it's communication style, it's understanding the person's values and positions, as well as understanding your own personal struggle. No one is perfect. And I also hear a lot, for whatever reason, I hear a lot of this from the women who I've worked with. They feel as though they don't want to be a nagger. They don't want to feel as though they're coming across always complaining. And because of that, some of the women I've worked with, they feel as though they don't necessarily feel they have a voice in a relationship because they have to quiet down or they have to be more submissive. Some of them want to be more aggressive, and then that comes across a very negative way to their partner. Because they're saying, well, you don't really hear me, so I'm going to say it. And saying it means I'm going to scream it to you, or I'm going to get loud. But getting loud doesn't change the fact that the person can hear you. They're not deaf. It's more about their feeling as though their voice is not heard. So I have to step up my volume higher so that you can understand me.
Someone is asking, what if the partner is calling them a nag and they don't feel like they're nagging? Like, how is that something you come across where what someone is saying is being interpreted as nagging?
Well, my interpretation of nagging would be a sense of complaining. And so if their partner is saying they're nagging, then essentially they're saying whatever you're telling me is a complaint and I need you to get off my back about it, or could you stop talking about it? A lot of times when people end up repeating something, and the other person either doesn't do it or doesn't hear it or doesn't comprehend it, the reason why whatever their request continues to be repeated is because it goes back to the sense of their voice is not being heard. Yeah. So if their partner is saying that they're calling them a nagger, then they can simply saying, well, what is it that I'm doing right now that's telling you that I'm nagging? And what is it about what I'm saying that's nagging? Is it because I consistently tell you that you have to pick up after yourself? Or do I have to consistently tell you, hey, you need to take the dog out or take the kitty litter out, or you got to pick up the kids? The things that are being requested of other people is connected to values. If it's about kitty litter or dishes, it's the value of teamwork and partnership and cleanliness. If it's about picking up the kids or doing something for the kids, it's about making sure that you're doing your part as a parent. So anything that you're asking of someone normally is connected to our value.
That's good. It's a perspective thing, like trying to reframe it and not think of it that way, but more so like we're a team. We got to work together. This is like what we're doing. I love that idea. When it comes to managing, because earlier you talked a little bit about managing the kids. Do you have any tips around how people can work through that, managing their kids during COVID and their relationship, that kind of balance? Because I know that is a struggle for a lot of people.
For parents, I would say it will depend on the age range of the kids. So, for instance, if I will speak from my own personal experience of having toddlers, essentially, for me and my kids, I understand that their need of attention is super high. And so whenever I take the laptop and go into my bedroom, now they associate that as work. So my 3.5-year-old is asking me, oh, Poppy, are you going to work now? I'm like, yep, I'm going to work. And so, but I always have to make sure I have to bring time for them to be playful and to be energetic. And so regardless of the kid's age and development, you have to remember, one, it's important to keep a schedule. Schedule is going to be important because you can't just do it on the fly. And you have to stay consistent with the schedule, because if not, you're going to burn out. Two, because we're now reliant so much to be remotely or being on our phones, it's going to be important for us to try to disconnect to reconnect. So I also say that a lot to my couples who prior to COVID, they would find themselves feeling very distant, even though they were physically right next to each other on the couch, because they were on their phones. Someone's playing Candy Crush and the other person's on Facebook or Instagram. And so what I tell folks is schedule a time during the day where you are getting off your phones, charge your phone so that you can be present. Now, I'm going to be honest, that's something that both my wife and I are still trying to work on. There's going to be times where for her, she might need that time to space out and just be on Candy Crush. And for me, I'm now on TikTok. So I'm just scrolling through these 15-second clips of people being very creative. And so, but we also have to remind ourselves that we can't just be so sucked in, that we need to find a way of how to reconnect to each other. And so when it comes to kids, they're going to notice how much time you're spending on your tablets and laptops and cell phones.
Oh, yes, they will.
Yeah. And then they're going to try to get your attention. And say, for instance, if you have an Amazon Kindle and you just think that you're just going to give it to your kid, we have one as a support for our kids' learning, but that we realize for a 3.5-year-old, they're going to be there for maybe up to an hour, and all of a sudden they're done and they're going to go play, and then they're going to tell me they pooped, and then they're going to say, I'm hungry. And so I would say, depending on your kid's age, you have to think about scheduling, you have to think about time as a family, and you have to think about your balance in terms of your responsibility to work and your relationship, because you cannot forget, if you live with your partner and the both of you are supporting the raising of the kids, You cannot forget your relationship. You're just not parents. It's going to feel like your parents 24 hours a day. But when the kids are asleep, you have to stop talking about them. You have to go back to where you guys are at. I know that's the same for you. Yeah, the put the phone away. And so, and it's going to impact intimacy. And I do give so much credit for those who are single parents, regardless if it's by choice or circumstance, because they don't have that ability to just switch off. Like right now, yes, I have to build a schedule that's posted on my fridge of the meetings that I have throughout the day and my wife's meetings so that we know who are we switching off. But I want to acknowledge the parents who are single, who don't have that ability or that privilege or that support where they can just switch off. They have to figure out how to do things on their own. And I work with parents right now who are struggling because they're getting so much emails and messages from teachers. And if you're a parent of multiple kids, you have to balance so many of your kids' learning and make sure that they have access to laptop and you have access to internet. And if you're someone who has to work, you have to balance all those things. So I want to also give credit to those parents out there who are doing their best during this time.
Thank you. I have a question about intimacy, but before that, I just want to, I'm laughing because this person says, what about the partner who feels they're always right? And the husband writes, that's me.
What, that the husband feels that they're always right?
No,
or the wife?
she's just asking, what about the partner? Like, what if a partner feels that they're always right in a situation, but then the husband responds on the Facebook and says, "That's me." I'm just cracking up, but that's a real question. What about those relationships where you have that one person that is feeling like they're struggling with that communication piece, because it feels like that's a communication thing.
One of the things I would ask is, what is the value of wanting to know that they are right? And I don't know if it goes back to this sense of the value of having their voice heard, or are they constantly in back and forth arguments over, well, I told you that this would happen if you go over so-and-so's house. I told you that they were going to do this. I don't know why you did that. Because a lot of times when you get advice or suggestions from your partner, even it happens to me, I may not necessarily listen to them, because what might be important is to hear other people's opinions and other people's perspectives, because it might just go back to feeling like I don't want to be treated as a child. I want to be treated as a partner. And so there's this sense of being always right. What is important for the person to have that feeling? Is it important for them because they feel as though they know better than their partner? Is it important because they feel as though a lot of the times their partner's cutting them off and they're always trying to give them some help, but their partner's shutting them out? So it depends on the specific circumstance of why the person is saying that they always feel like they always have to be right.
Okay, no, that's really good. A comment someone said, it's especially challenging for parents who also work opposite schedules, which is so true.
Oh yes, and that's I would look at that as you're acting as a single parent, because if you have if you're with the kids and your partner works night shifts and you're on a day shift, you're basically you're with the kids by yourself. And if especially even if it's people who aren't parents, and if it's couples, you tend to lose that connection. And I think that's important with all relationships whenever you guys have opposite schedules, because the concern will be, when are we going to be able to schedule time for us? Because that's the important part of relationships. It's about us and it's about we. Yes, there are individuals within the relationship, but that the relationship itself is about the unity of two people. Or for some folks, there's a unity of 3 or 4 people, depending on their what's important to them.
So that leads me to my next kind of topic I wanted to bring up, because you talked about this idea of creating intentional time to like do the schedule and try and be more intentional about trying to make that balance. How does one create or maintain intimacy during this time, so that that's still a part of the relationship and it's not just we're managing COVID, and not having any intimate time?
Well, the first is we have to create a actual definition of intimacy, because you're going to have very polarized views where there's going to be some people that think just physical sex, regardless of which form of sex, that's intimacy, versus other people where they would look at affection as intimacy. And so if we're looking at hugging, kissing, flirting, touching, cuddling, spooning, regardless of how you do it, that is a form of affection, and that is about just doing it sporadically, but doing it consistently. Because people want to feel cared for and people want to feel loved. Now, there is a thin line between people associating pure intimacy and pure sex as love. I would say that's part of love. That's not by itself love. Because we have people who have one night stands. You have people who are on Tinder and so forth. And so going to the creating time and space. If you're a parent, the best advice I would give to you is you have 2 time frames to do anything when it comes to physical sex. Is 1, if your kids are napping, and 2, when your kids are sleeping. And so you don't want to be like a bunny rabbit and be like, okay, their nap time is from 1 to 2, let's go. And so if you do that, yes, it might be a sense of excitement towards it,
Or
but then you
stress.
also don't want or stress, because you're worried about like, did I hear someone cry? The door can open. And so second, if they're asleep, the only issue with the sleep part is you have to assess your own level of energy. Like for instance, I'm someone, I haven't brought this up, but I'm someone who to work out early in the morning. And so I'm legitimately almost prior to COVID, I was falling asleep soon after the kids. And so of course that would create some not some angst or anger, but some sense of a time frame. I would tell my wife, I have an hour before like tired sets in. And then I didn't want to rush anything. It was more about like, hey, realistically, I'm going to be tired and I'm not going to have the energy. And we don't live the life where we can just like move next to each other at midnight. No, get off me. I want to go to sleep because I got to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go work out. So that's for parents. For those who are not parents, honestly, if you want to go at it at any time, if you have the time, go at it. It's but it's about like, yes, we live in a time where it's scheduled, and if scheduling is important and if it's necessary, then have it be what it is. But you also don't want to lose the organicness of the connection, because we're still human. We still desire what we desire.
Mm-hmm. I just like what this is like. What's each person's definition of intimacy? That's why you're the relationship guy. Like I never would have thought about that as like, because that is a starting point. We got to define what it is. So, what would you say? Because I think this is something that people don't really think about, what that looks like. How would you have people kind of navigate that conversation? Because that's a good like conversation starter, so people can get to know their partner and like what they really want.
Well, can you just rephrase the question real quick?
Yeah. What would you say? Like, how would you talk to a person, like a client? They came to you and they say like, we don't have enough intimacy and I need help like talking to my partner about intimacy. Like, how does somebody have that dialogue with their partner?
If they were having it without the support of like a marriage and family therapist or a couples therapist, I would say it's a couple of things. One, it's about your level of comfort when it comes to talking about both sex and intimacy. For a lot of people, regardless if it's 2020, the topic of sex and intimacy is still taboo. People have no problem doing it, but when it comes to actually having a very intellectual conversation about it, it becomes this sort of delicate balance because you don't know what that person's history is when it comes to sex and intimacy and affection. Two, you have to understand and respect that there are going to be some people who are going to be sensitive towards the topic because we don't know their history. There are some people who are very open-minded about discussing sexuality, and there's others who don't because actually they may have a history of trauma regarding sex or even intimacy. Three, I would say bringing it up as a topic of discussion and not necessarily an argument. What I mean by argument is going into the conversation, not blaming the partner about, well, why didn't you do this or why didn't you do that regarding sex and intimacy, or you used to treat me like this when we were dating, but now you don't do it. I call that the honeymoon stage. Everybody goes through that, and that's that beginning phase of trying to court someone and trying to basically show the representation of who you could be. But then as life goes by, people do change. It's not to say that what they did in the beginning, they aren't able to or incapable of doing it now. It's just that people have to adjust to what their life is like. So bring it up as a topic. Don't bring it up as an argument. If it turns into an argument, it might be that's the taking space. You might have to recognize that maybe this might be a sensitive topic. Two, respecting the fact that, if someone doesn't want to discuss it at that moment, that's fine, but don't just let the topic go. Just say, it's okay if we don't want to discuss it, but this is something that's going to be important for me to discuss this in the future, and understand that how we're going to grow together as a couple. If they were to go to a couples therapist or even see myself, now being mindful, there is a difference between going to a sex therapist versus going to a couples therapist. A sex therapist is certified in specific techniques when it comes down to sexual disorders. I'm not going to go into like the different disorders, but if anyone's interested, you can just YouTube what are sexual disorders. When you go to a couples therapist, you can discuss sex, you can discuss intimacy. And the purpose of discussing it is to discuss like what's getting in the way of the both of you, or however many of you are involved in a relationship, about connecting with one another. One of them could be scheduling. One of them could be saying that I am always the one I'm trying to initiate it, but they're always falling asleep. Or every time they want to initiate it, they initiate it at the most odd times, like when the kids are about to be awake, and that's not the best time. Or I don't necessarily feel attractive because throughout the years I have gained weight, or I've lost too much weight, or things have shifted where maybe mental health has taken its toll of like anxiety or depression, and that for whatever reason has turned the partner off, or even the arguments get so bad that people aren't as attractive to their partner anymore, and then it becomes an issue. No one can sit here and tell me you can just get turned on. You're not a robot. You're still a human being. Right. If I'm fighting with my partner in that moment, I don't care if she looks great naked. I am heated. I'm heated because you're not listening to me. You're not hearing my point. Like, get out of my face. Again, it happens to the best of us. I'm not perfect by any means, but it's an ongoing piece of work when it comes to sex, intimacy, and relationship.
Yeah, no, that's good. You just dropped like so many gems, this is what you do. And one of the takeaways, I think, which he says is going with the conversation, mindset versus arguments. And I think it's really making sure that we're mindful of like our perspective and the way that we are approaching situations can really prevent a lot of like blowouts from taking place. if we kind of think about our mindset. So that's really, really good. Tell people how they can reach you and because I know you're doing telehealth now, right?
Yes. And so if people are interested, I have a website. It's TalkThinkThrive.com. You can Google it. I'm also, I do some video postings on Instagram and Facebook. Again, it's TalkThinkThrive.com. You can also find me on Psychology Today. For folks to make it simple, if you Google, you can either type up my name, Omar Ruiz, LMFT. LMFT is just my license title, which is Licensed Marriage and Family Therapist. You can Google Talk Think Thrive, or you can Google Find a Therapist, which would lead up to the Psychology Today website that would show up on Google. And from there, it will allow you to search up by name, and you can search me there because I have a profile there.
Yeah, no, and he's really good. I actually started following Omar. He would wake up in the morning, like at 4 or 5 in the morning, you would go and work out. And and at the time I was transitioning to telehealth in January. And so what I realized is like I needed to get on a schedule because working from home, it was kind of challenging at first for me when I started. And I remember thinking like, well, Omar's getting up in the morning, I can get up too. And now like he has on Instagram, he does these really thought-provoking statements or, whatever things about relationships. And he's very solution oriented about it. And it feels like, okay, that makes sense, right? You talk to our level and where people can just kind of take on that information. So definitely like give him a follow. You'll get some good gems like we did today, like so good. This is like what you do. You're in your like bag right now with all of the things that you're telling us today. So I appreciate you.
And if folks notice from the videos, I'm outside. I literally came from like taking a walk or doing some exercise. And so it's more of a pet peeve. I would have rather my earlier videos, it's me in the office giving out points. But nowadays I don't have the luxury of just like being in the office. So whenever I do post the videos, just know I literally just came from working out and I know that I need to post something. And just please don't mind if I'm like sweaty or if I'm not dressed up or anything. It's just me trying to be in the moment and trying to give some support to you guys and the viewers.
We appreciate that. Last one more question now that you brought that up. What are you doing to take care of yourself during this quarantine?
So when we mentioned the whole exercise piece, what the viewers may not know, but what you might know is I have gone through a long weight loss journey. Where I'm at right now, I'm at around like 226, but when I started in July of 2018, I was up to 317. And when I had mentioned earlier on in this interview that I had taken a break, it was because I was getting so stressed out with trying to manage my private practice, manage a full-time job. That's when we started having kids. And so things were just getting a bit too much for me to handle. So I needed to, fortunately, I was able to have the opportunity to take a step back. And so what I'm doing now is 5 days a week. I wish I could get it. I have our diaper bag and I fill the diaper bag up with, it's a laundry detergent, like the BJ's Costco laundry detergent. Fill it up with water. I put it into the bag because I don't have any weights. And so I'll use that as weights. And then when I'm outside, 2 days a week, I do HIIT training, which is 30 seconds of walking, 30 seconds of sprinting, and then do that for about 10 minutes. And then the rest of the days, I'm just doing a long walk. And as far as nutrition, I am actually using the app MyFitnessPal. I literally have a scale. I weigh my food. I'm not an extremist. I'm not eating pizza. I'm not eating sugar or anything like that. I don't necessarily want to call them stupid, but these little memes of like 21-day challenge, like F that. Like that's not a lifestyle. That's not, like, I don't want to, if I knew if I could swear on this, I would swear, but
no, you're fine.
To be respectful, Okay, well, fuck that. Like, I honestly don't give a shit about those memes. That's not
Right.
realistic. That's not a lifestyle. So I also work with an online coach. Um, his name is Brett. He does like these Facebook group daily home workouts. He's a nice dude. I really to have conversations with him on the phone to be able to assess where I'm at and what's going on in my relationship to food and his adjustments to my plan is really working out. And I've been only working with him for about the past 8 weeks, but I really needed that, especially during this COVID piece, because without that support, I don't know. I think I would have tried to figure things out just like everybody else is trying to figure things out. Go online, go to YouTube, try to connect with other people who are doing it. And so, in short, I maintain a certain amount of calories. I try to, well, we have no choice. We have to figure out cooking food really reduces the amount of salt intake because before I would just go to Subway or get something and I didn't necessarily realize how much salt I was taking in. Now, granted, again, I'll still take salt. I'm an advocate of
Right.
eating something that is up to your lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so, in short, that's what I've done. I still work out 5 times a week. I incorporate some cardio. I do weightlifting with a bag and some, laundry detergent. And I check in with an online coach if anybody's interested. If you guys want to speak to the coach, I can just forward you his information. I don't get any commission from that. It's just more of a word of mouth of like I really trust in his work.
So the workouts have been really helping you maintain your like mental health and keeping you on track with your goals, the ones that you were already working on even prior to COVID.
Oh yeah, you have to get out the house. Like it's like I understand that the social distancing being 6 feet apart, but if I'm out early in the morning at 4 o'clock, the babies are asleep, no one's really outside. And so that allows me to have some space just to get some fresh air. And I encourage that for everybody, even if it means you go outside for like 10, 20 minutes, especially as the weather's getting warmer. I would really encourage that because that honestly keeps both my wife and myself sane. And my wife is a Zumba fanatic. She's now going on Zumba online. I'm not a Zumba person. I'm fine with that. She's good with that. But that in itself, if you can't go outside, I would say search for a community online that you can do something together.
That's good. Omar, thank you so much for making time to come
Mhm.
on. You're amazing. You know how much I love your content and everything that you do. So I appreciate
Thank you.
this. All right, I'm
And
gonna
same
say,
here. I appreciate you doing.
oh, thank you. All right, I'm gonna say bye. Bye.
Okay, bye.
All right. That was good. That was really good. Um, I really enjoyed that conversation. I think it's so timely and needed, especially now. I think, people were already kind of struggling in relationships, right, even before COVID. But I think COVID is exposing, or this quarantine life is exposing a lot of dysfunctions that were probably masked, that were probably able to be masked. And so I wanted to bring on the experts. So like, even though like me and Omar were both therapists, but we kind of specialize in different things, right? So there's not a therapist that can specialize in everything. It's not possible. Where can I rewatch? So you can actually listen on a podcast, or once this live ends, it'll be up on Facebook. You can watch it from the beginning. Once the live ends, which I'm about to end in like 2 minutes, you'll be able to watch it from the beginning. It'll be here where you're on Facebook and YouTube and Periscope. So I'm live streaming on 3 different platforms right now. I lost my train of thought. What was I saying? Shoot, I forgot what I was saying. I was saying something. I said people were already kind of struggling even before COVID. And and so like, even though like me and Omar were both therapists, like I don't specialize in family and marriage like counseling. Like, can I counsel, yeah, but it's not like my specialty. I wouldn't say like that's my specialty, which is why like if I'm talking about like depression, like I could spit out facts like that. The way he's talking about all of these different things around relationships and the struggles, because this is what he does all the time. He embodies it. So definitely like follow his content. He's super dope, super passionate about what he does. So that's amazing. You can listen to this on the podcast too. We listen to this on the podcast, or you can watch it back on the video. So I have a couple of workshops that I wanted to, so I have this free wellness assessment one that is available. Go to celestetherapist.com. I also created, I have a workshop called Relationship Goals, but I also created I created a podcast workshop. Everybody always asks me like, how did you start your podcast? I'm like literally like 5,000 downloads away from 100,000. So I've kind of blew up and I'm spread across the world. I'm in over 120 countries. So what I decided to do was I created this workshop where you can go on, purchase it, and I walk you through the steps. There's 3 different parts. Each part is 10 minutes each. And I walk you through the steps of like the prepping for the podcast, the content, like the importance of content. And the most important part, which a lot of people forget that do podcasting, is the marketing piece. So I give you like literally all the links to everything that I use in my thought process that goes into when I podcast, and how all of that, how I do all of that. So if you go to celestetherapist.com, you can find that course. I also, there's a free download where I created a checklist. So if you don't want to get the course, but you want to like figure out like, what should I think about doing to start the podcast, you can actually like go to my website and download a free checklist that will like lay out all the steps for you. So that was something that I wanted to do. So Romello, I didn't even see you. I wasn't on the screen, so ain't nobody losing their mind because you're in here. So how much? So that course is $49. So that course, the podcast one, is $49. So that's something that you can do if you are interested in like trying to podcast. I tell people like you can, I use a program called Lipson. So there's Anchor, right? There's different. So the program, when I say the program, there's different kind of, where your podcast is hosted. There's different places where you can host them. I use a program called Lipson, and the cheapest plan is $5. So if you have a computer and $5, you can start your podcast. I know Anchor has the free version, but in the course I give some context to being mindful on what you're using, because even though it's free, it has some drawbacks. So there's an article that I put up in the course that really talks about how the difference between Anchor and Lipson and all these other ones, and just kind of like starting from the beginning. The reason why that's important is because, like how I said, I'm almost at 100,000 downloads. If I were to change from Lipson and want to go somewhere else, I can't take my downloads with me. So when sponsors are looking at like, well, like how much people are listening to your stuff, like I can prove like I have, these many people that are listening, because the numbers don't lie. But if I were to move it, I lose all of that. So making sure you do your research about where you want to host your podcast is going to be huge. So thank you guys so much. We'll be back tomorrow, new episode, talking to somebody else that's empowering other people. May, I'm all full for guests, so I'm excited about that. If you want to be on the show or have a show idea, like send me an email, info@celestetherapist.com. Starting in June on Wednesdays, I'm going to go back to it just being me. So if you've been following my podcast for a while, I used to always have a bonus episode on Wednesdays that I do. And it was brought to my attention that people miss hearing me talk about my solution focused content. So I'm going to go back to Oh, Romello. I'm gonna go back to doing that. I'm gonna go back to doing my solution focused content that I was doing prior. Hey, Butch, prior to coming on here full time on and doing this. So love you guys so much. I thank you for rocking out with me. Y'all know how much I appreciate y'all. I couldn't get to this place without the support of you amazing people. So follow me on all social media platforms, Celeste Therapist. You can follow me everywhere. Go to CelesteTherapist.com to pull up anything that I've talked about today. Until next time, beautiful people, I will talk to you later.
Every laugh, every smile, every hug, every kiss, every touch, every person in my life that I care about and love. But wait, maybe I'm getting too emotional. That's exactly what they say you ain't supposed to do. Suppress your feelings, never talk about your pain. Can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon' be lit. And you are now rocking with Celeste the Therapist. Let's go.